One of the worst things that can happen in college football is when your team routinely sucks or their season completely falls apart and they aren't relevant. Unfortunately, due to the nature of college sports, some teams win and some teams lose. What you really don't want is your team to see a prolonged series of losing, and in today's video, I have 20 examples of teams who are completely miserable right now. Whether that's historically or currently, today I want to talk about the most miserable programs in college football and a quick rundown for each team. But before we get started, if you're a big fan of college football, be sure to subscribe to the channel, leave a like if you want to support today's video, and let me know what player, team, topic, or situation I can cover next. Now let's get started and talk about the most miserable programs in college football. Okay, so at number 20, we have the Kent State Golden Flashes. They are the worst program in college football right now, and it's not close. It wasn't that long ago that coaches like Sean Lewis and Daryl Hazel were able to have great years in Kent and take the team to some bowl games. But they've regressed to the bottom recently, going 1-23 over the last 2 years in the MAC. They fired their head coach for violating his contract multiple times, and they have an all-time record of 365, 608, and 28, or 38%. Since starting their program way back in 1920, they are 1-4 in bowl games and have only won one conference title in 105 years. That was in 1972. Despite being in the talent-rich state of Ohio, Kent State can't even get into a good year on accident. To make it worse, their new head coach Mark Carney was just elevated from offensive coordinator position, and it's not going to get any better anytime soon for Kent State. Up next, we have UMass. Ever since UMass moved up from the FCS to the FBS in 2012, they haven't won any more than 4 games in a season. They take bye games against teams like Mizzou and Penn State, knowing full well they're going to get blown out, and they were even kicked out of the MAC a while ago because they only wanted to be a football member, and their football was awful. They're back now after wandering in the wilderness as an independent, and what makes it even worse for UMass is they were once a pretty good FCS team. They have an all-time record of 577, 624, and 50, or about 48%, but won an FCS national title in 1998. That success didn't track though, and now they're one of the worst teams in the country. The fans and athletic department don't care about the program since they are a hockey and basketball school, and that's honestly sketchy, so it'll take a miracle for them to fix that mess. Up next, I want to talk about Vanderbilt. There are only 2 reasons why Vanderbilt is in the SEC. Their baseball program and the fact they are a founding member of the conference. They have 14 total conference titles, but not one of them is in the SEC, which they would end up help found in 1932. They have an all-time record of 625, 671, and 50, or 48%, and a bowl record of 5-4-1, but that success has been hard to come by recently, and even harder to maintain. The best stretch they had recently was under James Franklin from 2011 to 2013, where he went 2-1 in bowl games and finished with a 24-15 record. They're 1-2 in bowl games since then, and with the SEC getting even more difficult, it's hard to see them competing. But Clark Lee did just take them to a 7-6 record with a bowl win plus that Bama upset, so the future is brighter in Nashville than it used to be, but still, this team is miserable, as I guess winning 6 or 7 games deserves a parade for them. After that, let's talk about Florida International. Florida International has the lowest win percentage of any school in college football. They have an overall record of 92-178, or 34%. They started the program back in 2002, and despite being located in Miami, recruiting has never been easy for them. They've had some good coaches in their past, like Mario Cristobal, Butch Davis, and Mike McIntyre, but none of those coaches really did all that well. The second one of those coaches had a good season though, but then left to take another opportunity, and FAU has not had any sustained success throughout their entire lifespan, and their stadium is even named after a rapper. They have a good coach right now in Willie Simmons, who led Florida A&M to a 45-13 record, but he'll probably leave once he rebuilds FIU, just like all the other coaches did. Kennesaw State has the highest overall winning percentage out of anybody on this list, with it being nearly 65%, but they've only been a program for 10 years, and this past season, their first in the FBS, they went an awful 2-10 and fired the only head coach they've ever known. All their good history in the FCS is over now, and they're looking at a very uncertain future in Conference USA, which is why I have them as one of the most miserable programs. Their new head coach, Jerry Mack, went 31-15 at NC Central from 2014 to 17, but they have awful facilities, an awful budget, an athletics department who doesn't want to put in any effort, and it could get a whole lot worse for them. After that, let's go back to the state of Ohio and talk about Akron. Akron feels like one of the most hopeless teams in college football, and they pretty much always have been. They have an all-time record of 534, 602, and 36, giving them a win percentage of 47%, and they've only won the MAC once since joining it in 1992. They're 1-2 in bowl games since joining the FBS, with their last win coming in 2015, and their last bowl appearance being a 50-3 loss to FAU in the Boca Raton Bowl. They'll occasionally have good players like Jason Taylor, Charlie Fry, or Kanata Mumpfield, but the success is never sustained across the whole team. All you need to know about Akron in the modern era is that their current head coach, Joe Moorhead, is 8-24 in 4 seasons, and he's considered doing a good job. Ohio is a talent-rich state, and Akron is just outside of Cleveland, but it's really hard to win there. Going down south to Texas, UTEP might be one of the most miserable programs of all time. For starters, they have an all-time record of 415, 643, and 28 since going back to 1914, and they're 5-10 all-time in bowl games and have only won a conference championship twice. They won the WAC in 2000 and the Border Conference in 1956, and neither of those conferences are around anymore. Their best coach of all time went 66, 43, and 9 and took them to 1 bowl. Despite having one of the most beautiful stadiums in college football, UTEP suffers because of who and where they are. They used to be known as Texas School of Mines, and they haven't always had the biggest student base, and they're isolated from pretty much the rest of the state, and they're in the middle of the desert on the Mexican border. It's not exactly easy to recruit there. Going up to Indiana, Ball State is actually one of the more successful schools on this list, which is surprising. They have an all-time record of 479, 461, and 32, or just over 50%. They have won a total of 11 conference titles, with their last one coming in 2020, but the real problem comes is how they perform recently. They're 1-8 in bowls, meaning they don't perform in the postseason, and their only bowl victory came under head coach Mike New. Coach New did win a conference championship in 2020, but he's only 40-63 as a head coach, and the team regressed hard after that season. He went 3-7 in 2024 and was fired before the end of the year. Their new head coach is from Butler, who's an FCS school about an hour and a half down the road, and it's hard to recruit to Muncie, Indiana, even though the Midwest has a lot of football talent. Staying in the state of Indiana, IU, or Indiana University, deserves a spot on the list because of their all-time winning percentage. A few basketball schools have struggled throughout their history, but the Hoosiers have an all-time record of 514, 719, and 46, making them the losingest team of all time, just ahead of Northwestern and Wake Forest. They're 3-11 in bowl games throughout their history, with their last bowl win coming against Baylor in 1991. Even when Curt Cignetti led them to their best season ever, they lost their only postseason matchup against Notre Dame. Their last 2 conference titles were in 1967, and like I mentioned earlier, it's hard for basketball schools to push through that stigma and play well in football, but with the NIL and transfer portal, that could change. Coach Cignetti has high hopes for Indiana and could be leading them into their best era literally ever. Going back across the country to UNLV, they've also played well recently, but they are one of the worst football programs in terms of all-time wins. The Rebels are 258, 385, and 4, and they are under 40%. The only prominent player in their history is Randall Cunningham, and they've only won 1 conference championship in 1994. That was in the Big West Conference, which doesn't sponsor football anymore. They only started the program back in 1968, so they're pretty young. Their basketball team has a national championship, so they do have some athletics history, but just because they're in a big city doesn't mean they have a lot of money or they have a lot of NIL to pay up with. Until recently, UNLV was kind of irrelevant in the recruiting scene because Vegas isn't really a draw for recruits. We'll see if Dan Mullen can keep the momentum going that Barry Odom started though. Our next power team is Wake Forest, and as of right now, they are the worst Power 4 football program in the country. The Demon Deacons have an all-time record of 488, 677, and 33, or just around 42%. Despite that, they've done pretty well in the postseason as they've gone 11-6 in bowl games with 2 conference titles coming in 1970 and 2006. They're in a state in North Carolina with 3 other power programs, making it hard to stand out, and they're the smallest Power 5 university in terms of enrollment, and 6 of their 33 head coaches have finished above 500. That's really saying a lot for Coach Dave Clawson, who's gone 67-69 in 11 years in Wake, but went 5-3 in bowl games, and took them to an ACC title back in 2021. He honestly does not get enough credit, but now the Demon Deacons will rely on Jake Dickert, coming in from Washington State, to help keep them afloat in the ACC. The Yale Monroe Warhawks are one of the most consistently forgotten programs in college football, and they have a reason to be miserable. They have an all-time record of 330, 471, and 8, or just over 41%. They have 5 conference titles, with their only Sun Belt title coming in 2005 after going 5-6. They've only played in one bowl game in their history, which was back in 2012, and they lost 45-14. They have the longest bowl drought in all of college football, and Louisiana is a really talented football state, so it's hard to believe UL Monroe could be bad for so long, but they have bigger problems than their team. They're one of the least profitable athletic departments in the FBS, and Monroe isn't exactly a college town that recruits want to go to. Hopefully Bryant Vincent can turn it around, because it's ugly down there. Like many MAC schools, Eastern Michigan is smaller and doesn't have all that much money as an athletics department. But even for MAC standards, the Eagles are pretty dang bad. The team has an all-time record of 495, 630, and 47, or a win percentage around 44%. They've gone 2-6 in bowl games, with their last win coming in 2022, and they've won 10 conference titles, with only one coming in Division I. They've recently been coached by Chris Creighton since 2014, and he's been one of the best coaches they've ever had. Even then, he is below 500 as a coach, and is only 1-5 in bowl games with just one MAC title game appearance. The Eagles are good enough to be dangerous in the MAC, but can't seem to put it all together to win a conference title or a bowl game often enough. After resurrecting their program in 2013, Charlotte has only been to one bowl game, the 2019 Bahamas Bowl. They haven't had another winning season in their entire duration as an FBS team, and they have an all-time record of 50-102, or just around 33%, and the only reason they're in the American right now is because of the value the other programs bring, and because they're located in a big market in Charlotte. After Brad Lambert didn't work out, the team has hired 3 head coaches: Will Healy, who went 15-24, Biff Poggi, who started fights with the press and went 6-16, and Tim Albin, who was the last head coach at Ohio, he went 33-19. There is some hope for what Coach Albin will be able to do, but Charlotte hasn't been able to keep many good players in their backyard, so he has his work cut out for him. Neither program in the state of New Mexico is very good, and starting with the Lobos, who are 504, 648, and 31 all time, they are just terrible. They've won below 44% of their games, and they are 4-8 in bowl games and have just 4 conference titles. The last conference title came in 1964 as a member of the WAC, and they haven't won a conference title in 60 years. They also haven't won or even made a bowl game since 2016, and their greatest player in program history is Brian Urlacher, and their best player on their roster in 2024, Devon Dampier, left to play quarterback at Utah. New Mexico isn't a football state, so that is definitely part of the problem, and football talent is rare and oftentimes doesn't stick around if they're any good. But the coaching has also been suspect in Albuquerque, but they just hired Jason Eck from Idaho, which I think could be a boom or bust hire for them. On to that other team, we need to talk about New Mexico State. The athletics department as a whole has a lot of issues in every sport, and football is no different. The Aggies have an all-time record of 459, 679, and 30, or about 40%. Their most recent Power 4 title came in 1978 as a member of the Missouri Valley Conference, and their football program is so bad that they were kicked out of the Sun Belt twice for being so bad, and they are only in CUSA because the conference was desperate. They're 4-1 in bowl games though, with their most recent coming in 2022 under Jerry Kill. Coach Kill went 17-11 in 2 years, turning them from a doormat to a contender, but he had to retire for health reasons. Since then, the Aggies have gone 3-9 and are back at the bottom. Recently, there has been some talk that Temple could be the latest school to completely drop their football program. The Owls have an all-time record of 488, 623, and 52, around 44%. They are 3-6 in bowl games and have only won 3 conference titles. The good news is that those 3 titles are recent, coming in 2009, 2015, and 2016, and the bad news is it may never happen again. The team used to be good in the 1930s, 40s, and 70s, and have had a lot of coaches. Pop Warner, Bruce Arians, Matt Rule, Jeff Collins, Al Golden, Steve Adazio are just some of them, but honestly, they don't last long. Finishing out the Power Conference schools is Northwestern, as after helping to found the Big Ten in 1896, the Wildcats have gone a grand total of 566, 702, and 44, or just under 49%. They've been seen as the doormat of the Big Ten, having won 8 conference titles with their last coming in 2020. They're 7-10 in bowl games, with their last win coming in 2023, and the majority of their program's success in the modern era came under Pat Fitzgerald, who won 110 games there. He got fired for interesting reasons, and he went 5-5 in bowl games. With the expanded Big Ten Conference, Northwestern's chances of winning another Big Ten title are pretty much at 0, even if Coach Braun does a good job. It's hard to win as an academic school in 2025. We've got 2 more. Georgia State is another example of a young team that hasn't found a way to put it together just yet. They're the Atlanta metro area with Georgia Tech, but now also Kennesaw State, making it more difficult to recruit. Add that to the fact that they play in what used to be a baseball stadium, and Georgia State is definitely a weird team. Their all-time record is 64-115, or around 36%, and they had to move up to the FBS fairly quickly after starting out and didn't have much of a chance to grow organically. They're most known for their upset against Tennessee, and they're just 4-2 in bowl games, and the closest they've come to winning the Sun Belt came in 2020 when they went 7-5. Once upon a time, the Southwest Conference was considered a power conference, but in 2025, every single member of that former conference is a Power 4 school except for Rice. The Owls have an all-time record of 492, 652, and 32, around 43%, and they've only gone 7-7 in bowl games. They have 8 conference titles, with their last one coming in 2013, and their last outright title came in 1957. Given Rice's small student population and strict academic qualifications, it's hard to recruit. They recently made one of the most unique hires in the 2025 cycle, hiring Scott Abel away from Davidson. It's hard to win without scholarships at an academic school, and that's what Coach Abel did. Rice thinks he'll be a good fit, and time will tell. So yeah, today we talked about 20 of the most miserable programs in college football, but if I had to pick a team, the answer is going to be Kent State. They are miserable in every single way, and honestly I don't think anybody comes close. But what do you guys think? Who in your opinion is the most miserable program in college football? Why have these teams been so bad? And what video should I do next? Be sure to let me know down below, leave a like if you want to support today's video, subscribe if you're new, and check out one of the videos on the end screen. Hope to see you guys again soon, but until next time, peace.